Good morning, everyone. Welcome to IT Leaders Louisville. We are about a year old. Actually, it'll be another couple of weeks before we celebrate our one-year anniversary here in Louisville. We run this program in Indy and are getting ready to run it up in northern Indiana as well. I'm probably going to spread it a little bit further. Glad to have you here. You know, the question is always, why are we here? This meeting is for staff IT directors and managers, but CIOs and VPs are always welcome to attend. Not a sales meeting, it's really focused on helping you develop your leadership skills. Many of us are great technologists. It's probably why we got the job in the first place and then got promoted to some position of incompetence as a leader. Very few people get training in leadership in the IT space and frankly in engineering in general. Our hope is that by attending this meeting you'll get to network with others who are in leadership roles and improve your own leadership skills. When we started this about 7 years ago, what we found is many CIOs sent their direct reports to this in hopes of helping them get better. What happened over time was many of those who were sent stopped coming, and those who were trying to do quality assurance on their own career were the ones who were attending. So congratulations to you and kudos to you for trying to improve your own leadership skills. They're the hard part. Technology's the easy part. I think most of us would agree on that. So breakfast, networking, and leadership skills, we talked about that. Mentorship, we're going to talk a little bit more about later in the presentation. If you like what you see here, talk about it on LinkedIn. It's important for you to spread the word here in the marketplace. Our friends at Centric Consulting have done a good job of getting the word out. It really makes a huge difference when you as attendees talk to your coworkers or your friends who are in IT on the soccer field or at church or many of your other spheres of influence. If you could let other people know about this event, it's extremely useful. If you want to take some pictures, I'd sure appreciate it of the speakers, and you can send those to me. That's my mobile number up on the screen, or you can post them yourselves using the hashtag #ITLeadersLouisville there. So I appreciate you contributing to the success. If you want to stay informed on what the heck we're doing, itleaders.org/Louisville is the best way to do that. We've also got a LinkedIn company page called IT Leaders Louisville that we repeat what's going on in the schedule. Our next meeting is November 14th. We'll talk about that in a second. We went quarterly this year, so this is the third of 4 meetings. We are probably going to go bi-monthly next year. Quarterly, you kind of forget about it. Monthly, it feels like a job, so we'd like to get somewhere in between that. And very likely we are going to go second Tuesday of every other month starting in February next year. So if that suits your schedule, that's very likely where we're going to end up. And Yum has been an amazing host for us. We're glad to be back here, and all systems go, it looks like, on continuing with this location. Everybody like this location? Is it central? Good spot? There's parking. I like that. It's free. We have been doing something in some of our other markets, namely Pittsburgh and Columbus, with IT leaders, that I wanted to talk a little bit about today. We're thinking about bringing it to Louisville in addition to this meeting. This is a formalized leadership training curriculum that's very customized towards IT. The link up here, take a picture of it if that's of interest to you. This is a pay-to-participate program, but it is one of the best curriculum. I've been doing this for years, and it is one of the best curriculums on IT leadership that I've ever seen. The guy who runs it is a guy named Dan Roberts. He's got one of the best podcasts when it comes to IT leadership on the airwaves these days. It's called the CIO Whisperer, and he interviews CIOs all over the place. I love Dan. He asks the questions that are on my mind when I'm hearing these CIOs talk about their leadership journeys. But this program is really strong, and you'll get a good feel for what the curriculum looks like on the website. You'll also hear some testimonials from people who are involved. Am I blocking your vision there? Okay. Most importantly, this is a 9-month process, and it is about an hour a week is what the commitment is. If we can get enough critical mass, this program is virtual, or it can be. If we have 1 or 2 that are interested here in Louisville, you'll attend virtually and be involved. There will be a mentor involved with you that you'll meet with virtually, as well as your sub-cohort, the people who are in your group, who you can work with on a regular basis. If we can get 5 or 6 here in the city, we could actually do an in-person group for that sub-cohort on a fairly regular basis, maybe once every month, once every other month. I think there's power in that. We've also got some interest from a couple of CIOs on maybe being involved in the mentorship program live and in person here in Louisville. So I would encourage you to have a look at this. If you're interested, ping me. I'm easy to get a hold of. You can find me on LinkedIn, or there's content, hit me after the meeting if this is of interest. Retail price on this is $6,000 for a 9-month cohort. I can tell you that most people have their companies pay for it, and once the leadership teams see the curriculum, I think it's pretty easy to get this approved. We may have a scholarship or 2 available depending on the interest here, but if this is of interest to you, I would encourage you. There is no better way to take deliberate action to improve your leadership skills. A couple of other local groups we love to cross-promote, and if any of you are involved in groups other than these, please let me know so we can advertise and promote these other groups. Rocket Women, Shannon Fear is amazing. Any of you ladies ever, or any of you men ever attend Rocket Women? Fabulous. I love what she does. I heard the speakers she had last fall were amazing. In fact, I'm hoping to get some of those for IT leaders next year. But I love the work she does, and she's got a real passion for this space, so good. And men are invited too, by the way. Louisville Data Technology Group. This is one that I just got on my radar. This is for you data geeks in the room. Data's what we're really doing. Applications and plumbing and infrastructure and development are all interesting, but the business typically cares about the data and what's going on. So this is a meetup, and I would encourage you to have a look at this if it's interesting. Josh Higginbottom is heavily involved in this, and Matt Gordon as well from Lexington. So they had this group up, and it sounds like it's a pretty vibrant group. Anybody ever attend this? Okay, it's new to me too, so I understand. And then the Microsoft Users Group is pretty vibrant here. The Mirazon team puts this on, and it's pretty technology focused, but I think it's a good place to meet other people. If you're looking for your next hire, or you're looking for your next role, many of these meetings are good places to meet other organizations. Most of us as staff IT people quietly drive to work and do our work and quietly drive home, and we don't really build our networks appropriately. The best time to network is 2 years ago. The second best time is right now. So all of these groups can be meaningful to your long-term career in IT. This is your part right now. Anybody who has an open position in their organization that you're looking for? Anybody right now? Yes?
I got all kinds of positions open.
Okay, tell us about your company and the types of positions that are available.
So I work for QSR Automations.
Okay.
We do a lot actually with Young, but we look to put software into restaurants, hospitality spaces to make their restaurants run more efficiently.
Okay.
Back end kitchen management to front end restaurant management.
What sorts of folks are you looking for?
We've got all kinds of development positions open. I'm looking for an IT software development manager.
Okay.
We've got a controller position open. We've got a couple of support analysts, high-end tier 2, tier 3 technical
That's fabulous. And your name?
Megan Ensmore.
Megan, thank you. Anyone else?
I'm Teresa Bivens with Waystar, and we actually on my team have two open positions for what we call delivery managers.
Yes.
And they are Scrum Masters that support our agile foundational processes and our engineering teams.
Thanks, Teresa.
Yeah.
Did I see one more hand? Yes.
I'm Tina Maddox with Del Toro, and we are the IT target people. We build the technology that run the ads on the internet.
Yeah.
And we have several positions open, most of which are senior developer, data science, and an IT director for our DevOps team.
Fabulous. Thank Tina. Did you say your name was?
Tina Maddox.
Tina, thank you. Thank you for that.
My name is Mike Whittam with Churchill Downs, and we've had everything from project managers, network engineers, system engineers, DBAs, all those things.
Wow. Thank you, Mike. Go ahead.
One macro matrix integration with Jasper, Indiana, that's our headquarters. And our MSP division is actually hiring about 6 positions from level 1, 2, and 3 engineers.
Yeah.
And also we're looking for a process analyst who's going to help us with all of our onboarding and make sure that overflow works inside the that specific division. So it's not a super technical role, but it has to be very focused on reporting and understand the technology.
Yeah, the process world seems to be growing by the week right now. It's really impressive. Anybody else? This is fabulous. Look at all these opportunities. Tell your friends who are looking, whether they're on the market right now or quietly looking for their next job. Anyone else? All right, how about anyone who is looking for their next role? Anybody in that situation here in the room? Okay. All gainfully employed and happy, or don't want to talk about it in public at least, right? Okay, fabulous. Thank you. If you like what you see here, and you want to make sure that this group continues to grow and change and develop, take my phone call when I follow up with you if I haven't already talked to you. Share the presentations and the videos. I typically post after event LinkedIn things, and I will be sending you a follow-up email with copies of the presentations from both presenters today. So if you like the content, share it with your coworkers and share it with your friends who are in the IT business. And as I mentioned, schedule some time with me. The feedback that you give me after these events is extremely meaningful and helps to shape future events. How many of you, this is your first time attending? Wow, that's a good bunch. And how many of you have attended more than, or 2 times or more over the time we've been doing? Wow, impressive. Well, we're grateful. I think it's been amazing to meet all of you. I feel very at home in Louisville, even though I'm from the North Louisville suburb called Indianapolis. I think it's super fun to come down, and I've just met such wonderful people down here in the IT community that we're glad to be doing this work. Okay, our next event is November 14th. This will be the last event of the year down here. As I mentioned, we're quarterly this year, and we're likely going to go to bi-monthly in February, second Tuesday in February on. But it will be back here, and I've got Jay Messner coming from Cincinnati, and Katura Jenkins, who's over at Humana. Katura's taken a new role. We'll have topics posted here in the next couple of weeks on what they'll be talking about, but that's who we'll be right back here, so easy to find. Registration will be up probably by the end of the week for this next event. My marketing team's a little backed up right now, so it'll take a few days before we get the registration up. And finally, the 2 people, or the 2 companies that do most of the work in underwriting this event and making sure it happens. Number 1, Centric Consulting. I've got a few people from Centric here, right? 2, yeah, 2. They've been instrumental in getting the word out. They're boots on the ground here in Louisville. Chris Durham's usually here. She She had some personal issues to take care of this morning, but Centric has been super instrumental in making sure that we get attendance and get the word out for this event. Centric does amazing work. We do business with them. Expedient does in multiple markets. They are some of the best consultants that are practical and effective and affordable of all the folks that we deal with. You know, there's the big, giant, monolithic companies, and there's the one-man shops, and they occupy the space in between and do amazing work on everything from process to cloud to organizational change management. I'm a big fan of theirs, and I'm glad that they're involved in helping us. And then my company, Expedient, I've told you since we got started on this that Expedient has a firm commitment to Louisville, and I've told you that we have been looking for a data center down here in Louisville to expand into, because we think that you need more than one choice for data centers here in this market. We are in advanced talks right now with a local data center and hope to have good news for you by the next meeting on a permanent facility here in Louisville to provide co-location and our award-winning VMware cloud. So excited about that. I hope to have that great news. The talks continue and look very positive. So great news on that front. And we do what we say we're going to do when it comes to things like this. Today's speaker, Mark Hamner, Senior Manager. He's going to be talking about some of the amazing community things they're doing to bring along the next generation. Our original guest speaker, Chris Zeit from Louisville Metro, contacted me Sunday night, and his father got sick. He's in Baptist East for all of you who come from Baptist, but Chris was unable to make it. We'll get him for another slot. My friend Eric Satterley has agreed to cover for him and provide you some great information as well at the last minute. So thanks, Eric, for saving my bacon and for bringing value to the group. Let's get started with Mark right away. Thank you.
All right, so thank you all for coming. My name is Mark Hamner. I'm going to be talking to you about how we can support the next generation of IT talent. I'm going to get into a little bit more about myself in just a minute, but I wanted to start with a very personal story for you all. So, love my parents, but we grew up very poor. We grew up in a federally subsidized HUD subsidized housing complex in a little town called Columbus, Georgia, which for those of you who haven't heard of it, as I'm sure none of you have, about an hour and a half south of Atlanta. My parents both did their best, but we didn't have very much money, and frankly, I was kind of on the same track to follow that pattern as we go forward. But some things happened that changed the trajectory of where I was going. The first thing happened when I was about 8 years old. My uncle came to visit us from Texas, and he brought me a TRS-80 computer from Radio Shack. Now, many of you have never heard of Radio Shack, or you may know it as the place where your grandparents bought transistors. But back in the day, they sold computers. And my uncle bought me a very small computer, had 4K of memory, plugged it into the TV, got a little blinky light that just said, okay, and I began coding BASIC. Back in those days, there was no Stack Overflow. There was nothing like this. You bought computer magazines and computer books and learned to code from that. So I was instantly hooked. Absolutely loved learning to code on this thing. Coded little goofy little games and all sorts of fun stuff, and really became the nerd that I am today. And the second thing that happened that altered my trajectory is when I was about to graduate from high school, my senior year, at the beginning of my senior year of high school, my guidance counselor said, so what's next for you? And I said, well, I really don't know, because again, love my parents, but there was no money for college for Mark. So didn't necessarily think I was going to college. I always tried to hang out with people more well off than me, so they were all going to college, so I did all the tours and everything, but didn't really think that I was going. And he said, well, there's this local company or this program locally where they partner with local companies to send you to college as long as you agree to work for them for X amount of time. And I was like, well, that sounds interesting. He said, I know that you're into programming and things like that, so you should explore that. So it was called the Compass program. It was a partnership between a bunch of companies local to Columbus, Georgia, and a college called Columbus College, now Columbus State University. And so I applied to that, took the programmer's test, and got waitlisted. So I was like, awesome. But then, much thank you to this anonymous person, someone decided they didn't want to do it. And so I got unwaitlisted and got into the program. So that was very awesome, and I worked for a company called TSYS, now part of Global Payments. Many of you probably heard of them. For many, many years, they paid for my school, and so then I was off to the races and became the IT nerd that I am today. Now, I am not rich by any means. I'm not going to be up there hanging out with Elon Musk and those guys, but I can now afford to take my kids on vacation sometimes. I can not have to stress about money. I'm not dealing with some of the things my parents dealt with, the constant calls from collectors and things like that. So those two things really changed the direction of my life, and now it's going to impact my family tree, as one of my friends from JCPS likes to say, because my kids aren't going to have to deal with that. Hopefully their kids aren't going to have to deal with that. So in my story, two things happened, right? An adult took interest when my uncle decided, hey, I bet Mark has an aptitude for this computer stuff. And an opportunity was provided. I was able to get that opportunity with the Compass program, with TSYS in Columbus, and I had to do the work. But without those two things happening, I'm not sure where I would be today. So that's my story, and I tell you that because the reason I'm really interested in this mentorship stuff and in bringing along the next generation is because someone did it for me, right? This is my story. This is how I got to where I am today. 25 plus years ago, somebody did this for me. So I'm really, really interested in paying it back, so to speak, for that. So here's a little bit about me. My main job is I'm an application engineering manager for Waystar, where I have the great fun responsibility for our technical education, primarily working with our BIT 502 program and creating classes for our existing team members to take. I also have the privilege of teaching at JCTC, and starting in the fall, I'll also be teaching at U of L, so if you're trying to learn things, there's very little chance of getting away from me. I also have the great privilege of chairing our BIT 502 board. I'm also a member of the JCPS Academy's guiding team, the Code Louisville Employer Advisory, and then several high school advisories that I work on. So that's what I do. So I like this slide because whenever I tell people that, it feels like I'm like, oh, look at me, look how special I am. I tell you all this for a very specific reason, and it deals with one of my friends who styled herself as a parenting influencer. So I had a friend who decided she was going to be a parenting influencer, and whereas I consider myself a pretty decent programmer and an okay-ish leader, I have 3 kids and I do not consider myself a good parent. I feel like I mess up daily with those poor kids, and they still love me, so thanks, Bailey, Jack, and Chase. So I was really excited about this. I was like, I can't wait to learn from her how I can do better as a parent. And so I'm thinking, looking at her, I'm sure if she's going to be a parenting influencer, she's probably got multiple kids who've gone on to do really good things, really involved in the community, really successful. Now teach me how I can do the same thing. And she had one kid who was under a year old. So I tell you all of this because I want you to know that I really am putting my time where my mouth is, so to speak. These are things that I really do care about, and I am investing a lot of time in this. I didn't just, read a book last night and come talk to you all today. I really do care about this stuff, and it is very, very important to me. All right, so let's talk about investing in the next generation. First of all, why, right? Well, I like to do it because it's the right thing to do. That's my happy, shiny, from the heart reason that I believe in working with these kids, helping bring up the next generation of engineers, programmers, IT support professionals. But I understand that many of your companies aren't interested in what Mark's heart is telling him to do. So, if you like statistics, which I do, Here's one for you that I think is really cool. And this is recent. This wasn't just something from a few years ago. The BLS expects employment for software developers, QA analysts, and testers to grow by 25% from 2021 to 2031. This represents a significantly higher projected growth than the other occupations. So, you're going to need technical folks. You heard us go around the room and people were saying, we're hiring all kinds of folks. We need engineers. We need support desk people. We need all these folks. We need project managers. And I realize this kind of contradicts what you're hearing out of California, where you have companies laying off 30,000 people and things like that. But what I found is, many of you may have figured this out as you drove in this morning, this isn't California, right? Our needs are very different than what you're going to see on the news and on all the tech radar sites and things like that. And we still have a very dramatic need for IT talent here in the Louisville area. So it's really important. All right, so let's talk about ChatGPT for a minute. Now, I need to disclaim here and say I do not hate ChatGPT. I do not hate generative AI. As a matter of fact, when I leave here today, I'm hopping in my Honda Civic, driving to Elizabethtown, where I'm going to give a talk at ECTC about generative AI. So I have nothing against our friend ChatGPT, but I've heard a lot of talk about how ChatGPT is going to replace programmers. So I'm not Nostradamus. Can I say for sure that that's not going to happen? No. I can tell you that I believe strongly, based on 25 years in the IT industry, that that is not going to happen. And I base that on my actual business experience with what's called a no-code and a low-code piece of software. Some of you may have heard about this. Some of you may have used them in your businesses, where they say, hey, you don't need programmers. Buy our software. I'm not going to call them out. Many of these businesses do amazing. And your business people can just say, hey, software, I sure would like a CRM system. And it would go, here you go. And I have been at companies where this has been sold to us. And I will tell you what my experience is. And I'm not going to name the company. You guys can Google it. But they came in and they sold our leaders a piece of what they called no-code or low-code software. And we quickly found out that it's not, hey, software, build us this. You had to figure out how to speak that software's very particular language to tell it how to build something with its flowcharts and its draggies and its droppies and all the things. And so what that actually spawned is a brand new class of programmers who knew how to talk to the low-code software to tell it to build the things. And FYI, spoiler alert, those programmers are now specialized and cost more than if you would just hired a C#, Python, or Java programmer in the first place. So, I know that's kind of a hot take, but no, I do not believe for a minute that ChatGPT is going to replace programmers going forward. All right, so now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the next generation. A few things about the next generation that I have observed through my time working with them. They may not all have computer science degrees. I know many of you are like, what? So that was my journey at first. I got an associate's degree coming out of the program because I came out early, then went back to school using my company's tuition assistance program and finished my degree at night. They're also going to look and think differently than us. I'm a firm believer that the next generation of us IT nerds are not going to all be white dudes named Mark. So that is going to be, I'm really committed, as is my company, to increasing the amount of underrepresented groups that we see at the table in IT. They're driven by social impact, and I think that's really important as well. I talk to kids from coding boot camps. I talk to kids from applying to BIT 502, and I say, what kind of apps are you interested in building? I've seen them building apps to figure out how underrepresented groups are affected by policies like redlining in the past and things like that. I've seen them build traffic flow apps to help track how to get people in and out of their churches more quickly. They want to make an impact. They want interaction in community. While people of my generation may very much just want to sit in our little Mark caves and code our little computers with our dark mode on and never see another person as long as we live, so many of the people that I work with and these kids, they want to be part of your company culture. They want to get involved. And this last point I really want to stress, they're driven, determined, and hardworking. There is a dramatic misconception out there about the Gen Zs of the world, that they're just so lazy, they just want to be YouTube influencers, and certainly some of them do want to be YouTube influencers, right? But my experience with my BIT 502 apprentices, And the kids I work with in high schools here at JCPS and in Indiana is not that. I see a lot of kids who really want to succeed, who are driven by success, and who want to help make their family successful as well. So the idea that they're all just a bunch of lazy folks who want to make the TikToks all day is not my experience at all. All right. So I'm going to go over several different programs with you all today. And my goal here, while as Doug says, this is not a sales pitch, none of this costs any money, so that's kind of how I got around that. I am going to ask if you want to get involved. And if you do, I'm going to have several different calls to actions. I have put my card right there on the front table. Waystar gave me so many of these. Please take a card. And I'd love for you to come get a card. Email me, mark.hamner@waystar.com. I would love to have coffee with you and talk to you more individually about how your company can get involved in these programs. So we're going to start by talking about programs for non-traditional students and career switchers. These are students who may not go the typical four-year computer science degree from U of L or from Bellarmine or from wherever route. They're going to be students who perhaps go to a college like JCTC or ECTC. Or they're going to be a student who is doing something else. We have one of our great apprentices who was an aviation mechanic for years, and now she's one of our most successful engineers at Waystar. So I really, really want to talk about what's available here. The first thing I want to talk about is BIT 502. Many of you who've talked to me a little bit have heard of BIT 502 a little bit. BIT 502, the BIT stands for Be in Tech. I can joke about this because I'm very heavily involved. I feel like we came up with the acronym and worked our way backwards on that. So BIT 502 is a 2-year apprenticeship-style program where students go to school online, and then they work for your company 4 days a week. Right now, they have a cohort meeting where all the apprentices get together over at JCTC's Ammett Center once a week on Monday. Right now, it's at 10 a.m. And then they take online classes through JCTC. And then, Tuesday through Friday, they work for you. So we have several apprentices at Waystar. Several folks in the room have apprentices as well. And it's a really great opportunity for these students. Now, benefits of BIT 502. For the students, they earn an associate's degree when they're done with the program. Usually, the amazingly talented people from JCTC can work with financial aid and figure out how to get them that associate's degree debt-free, which means we can get more people who may not have this as a typical path for them involved. And they get 2 years of experience in the actual IT field, learning things like C#, Python, .NET, Java, JavaScript, all the things they're going to need to succeed. Now, one thing you hear is the experience paradox, right? That you see that people say, okay, so I just graduated with my 4-year computer science degree, but I can't get an entry-level job because they all need a year or two of experience. What am I supposed to do? This program is one great way from a student's perspective to help from that. Also, from your perspective, if your CTO or CIO says, yeah, but what's in it for us? I get that, right? You're going to have these folks working for you, doing work for you, and it's an employer-led program. JCTC does amazing work on the academic end, but they are nice enough to let us structure our program at each individual employer how we want to structure it. Waystar leans heavily into the training model. I teach these kids for 11 months or so how to do the software and the coding languages that we use at Waystar to augment what they learn at JCTC. GE does a rotation model where they take their apprentices through different departments every 6 months, which is also cool. Every one of our sponsors is free to structure their program as they see fit. The only thing that we do ask is that they need to be working on IT. They shouldn't be getting coffee later. If y'all want to come see me, I've got a funny story about that. All right, so many of our local employers are already participating. You see Waystar up here. I need to work on this slide a little bit more because Waystar, me, little bitty. But you see all these great employers here. We've got Louisville Geek, Waystar, Yum, Papa John's, QSR. So I warned you guys I was going to do this. If you are with one of these companies, or if your company supports or as a bit participates in BIT 502, can you stand up for a minute for me? See you in the room, guys. Yeah, awesome. So look at all these awesome folks and ask yourself, don't I want to be awesome? So I would love for you to come see me, and I've already had coffee, as has my friend Tiffany here from JCTC, with several employers who are interested in joining BIT 502, so you guys can sit down. So I would love for you to get involved as well. They do have several different tracks available. Programming and IT support are primarily what Waystar does, but you could also see network administration, information security, cybersecurity. You can work with JCTC to design the tracks that you want. As a matter of fact, I meet with Tiffany and Dr. Bruce Jost, who recently got promoted, so there'll be a new version of him taking over BIP 502 from the academic side. And we talk about, hey, we have a new apprentice. What track should she take? What classes should she take at JCTC? So you can have that level of involvement. You very closely work with JCTC. If a student is struggling in class, you know about it. If a student is struggling at work, JCTC knows about it. And that way you can partner to make sure that they are successful. And this is what we're talking about here, right? We do ask that every apprentice that is placed with you have a mentor. At Waystar, that's me. We have lots of folks here, like Megan is here from QSR. She works closely with the apprentices at QSR. You see Tina from El Toro. She works closely with the El Toro apprentices. So we do ask that even if it's not the person who leads up the program, you need to have someone there to work with them so they're not adrift, right? And then they have a student success coach, one of Tiffany's many hats at JCTC that she wears, who works with them on the JCTC side to make sure everything's going great with their academics. So that is BIP 502, a few things here. And this one's important. If your leadership says, hey, okay, Mark gave a nice little talk in his cool pink jacket about why Waystar likes BIP 502, but what's in it for us? Our apprentices have an advantage over our traditional entry-level new hires in that they're familiar not only with our coding languages, but our standards, our processes, how we deploy code. They can hit the ground running when they actually get with their teams. All of our BIP 502 2021 apprentices have been hired full-time, with one exception. Still hurt by that, but he went off to NKU to live the college life. I can't really blame him for that. And one of our 2022 apprentices has already been hired full-time by us. We at Waystar, and if you join in, I recommend you do the same thing. If you do hire apprentices early and they are eligible to be hired at any time, let them stay in school. Let them continue going to that cohort meeting so they can have that associate's degree when they finish. Stay in school, kids. And here are just a few fun pictures of our apprentices. You see here is, they're in our Waystar office. They're designing an assignment that I've given them to help them learn to code C#. There we are at Topgolf with some of our apprentices. I'm absolutely terrible at Topgolf, by the way. And here we are at a fun team lunch there. And here's just a few more fun things. I want to point out a few things here, right? The top one up here on your right is Tiffany and I talking to a local high school about BIP 502, telling them about the opportunity. I love this picture because it looks like we're in a rap battle, right? I'm like talking, Tiffany's like, so, you know, like she's just kind of working on her comeback. But this picture is my favorite, right? In all seriousness, I had the great privilege to attend the JCTC graduation and see our BIP 502 apprentices, Julian, Leo, Dallas, and Analia, get their associate's degree, and that was super rewarding. I'm not a cry at, like, you know, heartfelt movies kind of guy, but I admit my allergies may bother me a little bit during that ceremony. So that's very cool, and it is very, very rewarding. All right, here's just a few quotes about BIP 502. This is from Jessica Nason, one of our engineering managers at Waystar. Analia was hired by her, and she notes that she was able to jump right in on their first day and code like someone who'd been there for over a year. And I also want to include a quote from an actual apprentice, Daniel, who was also hired early. He likes the program because when he got to his team, he could contribute immediately after being hired. All the stuff that you typically have to do for onboarding and things like that, you can handle during the apprenticeship program and really save your engineering managers a lot of legwork. So, I warned you there was a call to action coming on each of these. We need more sponsors. Last time we had so many students interested, and we're always trying to get more, but we want to make sure that all the qualified students have a place they can go. If you're interested in becoming a sponsor, grab my cards right up there in the front, and let's talk about it. Tiffany and I will be happy to have coffee with you. I'll buy you a coffee. It'll be good. Grab my card and reach out. Next thing I want to tell you about, many of you already know about, is Code Louisville and Code Kentucky. These are coding boot camps here in the Louisville and Kentucky area. They're a career program, training program arm of Kentuckiana Works. Again, if you know Brian Lorman, he does a great job with those programs. And they're designed to expose job seekers to the technologies that we use here in Louisville. Job seekers learn everything from JavaScript to web development to C# to all these options that they have, and they can do it while they have a regular job, and they get a mentor who works with them once a week or sometimes more depending on the need and how much time is available to help them learn how these technologies are going to be used and help them learn their projects and things like this. And priority of registration is given to low-income families, unemployed, and groups traditionally underrepresented in the tech workspace, which I think is so important because, frankly, there's a line to get into Code Louisville because it's that successful of a program. So we really want to continue to work on that. This is just a little bit more about, I'm not going to read you each of these slides, a little bit more about how Code Louisville works. Projects, they get several projects they have to complete. I'm very fortunate to be part of their advisory committee and get to sit in their Slack channels, which is the real fun part, and get to see all their questions on projects and things like that. And they do have mentors, and they do things like resume workshops, career readiness, and things like that. So it really gets them ready for that. And the idea is, we've hired several Code Louisville folks at Waystar. I know several of my Bit 502 partners hire folks from Code Louisville. These folks are really well prepared, and we see a lot of career switchers come through Code Louisville, which I think is really awesome. And here's just a few things they learn. Kind of like I mentioned, you're talking C# and .NET, which is what we use a lot at Waystar, but we also use a lot of the JavaScript stuff, Python, most popular programming language in the universe, even though it's not new, though a lot of people think it is new. And the mentorship part, which is where you guys can really help. Here's just some cool stats about Code Louisville. We have 400 to 450 participants in a year, 3 cohorts, and 150 new participants every cohort, and 100 or more return for their second course. Here are some stats. As you see, the Code Louisville participants are more racially diverse than our typical IT workforce, which again goes to the point of, not everyone has to look like me in the future of IT, right? All right. There's some great stats. 820 program participants landed new jobs in tech or received a significant promotion. 1,900 people have completed 1 or more courses, and 962 have completed 2 or more. And there's some more great stats there. And this is the one I'm asking you for help on. 300 plus technology professionals have contributed over 15,000 volunteer hours. So, but we need more mentors in Code Louisville and Code Kentucky. Code Kentucky is pretty much like Code Louisville, except it is expanded to the rest of the state. We still have a few counties that I'm always badgering them about that we need to get expanded to, but Code Louisville and Code Kentucky together now cover the vast majority of the state of Kentucky. So your call to action here, like before, grab a card. If you want to become a part of this, we need mentors. I'd be happy to talk to you, get you hooked up with Brian Lorman, and we can get you plugged into Code Louisville and Code Kentucky so you can help change these people's lives. Remember earlier when I said how important it was for an adult to take an interest? This is a way you can take an interest in helping a young person or a career switcher change the trajectory of their life and of their family. It makes a big difference. Let's talk for a second about programs for high schoolers. And like that, Doug and I were just talking about curmudgeons earlier, but get off my lawn. All right, let's talk for a minute about the academies of Louisville. As I mentioned, I moved here from Georgia, and I had never seen anything like this before in my life. When I learned about this, I was very amazed. So, I know you can't read that. I can barely read that. I'm like 2 feet from it. So I'm just going to tell you about it. So the academies of Louisville takes the typical high school model and turns it on its head and does everything through the lens of a particular career. So for example, if you're interested in IT, you could be in the IT academy, and every class you take, there are little schools within schools. So they can typically have their own hallway or two within a bigger school. And if you're in the IT academy, every class you take is going to be through the lens of IT. As an example, perhaps for English or writing, you're not writing a paper on Plato and Socrates. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But you're writing a paper on Google's use of generative AI, and you're learning to cite sources and things like that on that. So everything you do in the academies filters through the lens of your chosen career. There are academies in IT, there are academies in culinary, and they cooked us some great meals for our meetings at these places. There's law, they have these cool mini courtrooms, all sorts of stuff. So I say all that to say, I want you to get involved in IT, but if you have other, like maybe your legal team wants to help out, they could also help out. You can send them my way as well. All right, so, as it says here, I want you to look at the right side of the bin here. Academies are small schools located within larger high schools that integrate academics with technical know-how and an occupation or industry that has important ties to the local region. I went to a meeting about this at the zoo just last week, and a question I ask is, how do you determine what sort of profession gets to be an academy? And our friends at JCPS do a lot of hard work to figure out what professions are most in demand in Louisville, and those are the professions that become an academy. So we're not going to put kids through an academy just to have them not have the potential for a job on the other end. So, a few things here. They started the freshman academy. At the freshman academy, they learn what all academies are available to them. So they can say, okay, I see I can go law, I can go IT, I can go culinary, I can go, Seneca High School has an amazing agriculture academy. They have a little farm right there at Seneca. I can go agriculture. And then from sophomore year to senior year, they actually are in those academies, learning and growing in that space. They have a nursing academy, which is absolutely amazing. So there's all these different ways that the students can participate and learn about their chosen profession. This year, 63% of all high school students, and Louisville's a big school district, as you know, JCPS, representing over 18,000 kids, are in the Academy of Louisville School. Next year, it's going to go to almost 20,000, changing to 67% of all high school students. So are going to be in these academy schools. So business partnership is super critical. FYI, here's some of the academy schools. Western is shifting to a math, science, and tech magnet. If you're interested in that, talk to me and I can get you hooked up there. Eastern has a big star on it because it has switched over to be an academy as of this coming year, which is pretty cool. So, how can you become a business partner for the academies? Waystar is an Academy of Louisville partner with Fern Creek High School, and you basically just make yourself available. I go in, I do AMAs, Ask Me Anything interviews with the kids. I had some of my apprentices come in and show them an assignment that they created in our BIP 502, so I sort of merged the two things that I care a lot about, and walk the students through, okay, how should we design the database for this? What considerations do we have to do to make this work? So that's what they need. They need business partners for these academies. Again, no cost to you other than the fact that you're paying somebody to do this. And here's just some, and again, you'll get this presentation after. This is something JCPS put together. Low intensity to high intensity as far as time commitment. You could do things like a classroom guest speaker, all the way to offering youth internships and apprenticeships to these academy students. And just gives you just some more information on that. Again, if you want to commit to this, and I hope you will, you could be part of your school's advisory committee. I sit on Wagner's and Fern Creek's right now. Basically, you talk about curriculum. You can have an impact on what they're teaching the kids and how they're teaching it. And then maybe host a field trip, host a job shadow. We did that recently as well. So there's great opportunities to get involved with this stuff. 15 schools, over 18,000 students enrolled, and right now we have over 175 business partners. I'm hoping that I can add to that number here today. Some great quotes from a parent. I wish this was offered when I was in school. My daughter has become an engaged learner, which will help her become attuned and better prepared for life. I recommend the Academies of Louisville because they're helping our children make more informed decisions about their future. Not going to read all those to you, but these are some great quotes that talk about the difference this is actually making. And here's some great pictures from the academies. See the nursing academy, some of the business academies, the science. And here's Waystar's involvement. Remember I said I brought my BIP 502 apprentices to Fern Creek and had them talk about the stuff they built. That's my apprentice Chess, Jet, and Clayton. And they're actually showing the apprentices something they created and showing the students something they created and talking to them about how they did it. There's my AMA. It's just me and Quincy from Fern Creek because we couldn't photograph any of the kids. And the top picture here, we actually hosted Fern Creek at Waystar, and that is them listening to our CEO, Matt Hawkins, talk to them from his office in Utah. So it's a great opportunity all the way around. And right there on the far right, that is me telling these students about the worst coding mistake I ever made. So that's also fun to talk about. So, call to action here. We need more business partners for our Academies of Louisville School. So please, grab a card, talk to me. I can get you hooked up with Kristen Wingfield, and we can get you set up for that. And finally, fun fact, a large percentage of our high school students decided on their career path before entering high school. That surprised me. You know, he said we have the freshman academy, right? So one of the neat things that I learned, or shocking things I learned at a meeting we had about a year and a half ago, we had a panel of academy students. And one question I asked was, when did you decide you wanted to go into nursing or into IT or into culinary? They said, we knew before we even got here. Freshman academy was awesome, but we knew before we got here what we wanted to do. So what that means is we need to take a step back, and we need to get these kids when they're even younger than high school and get them interested in IT. And to that, I want to talk about programs for younger kids. Specifically, I want to talk about JA, Junior Achievement. This is an amazing organization. And I'll just read you their blurb. Can't say it better than them. With interactive programs tailored to elementary, middle, and high school students, JA introduces young people throughout our community to the realities and possibilities of the working world and personal finance. So, 70,000 students in our area were impacted by Junior Achievement. I'm not going to go into all the details of all the amazing things they do, but we're talking mock interviews, resume workshops. I had the opportunity to go downtown to Junior Achievement and lead 3rd through 5th graders in a talk about IT, and we played a game teaching them how to iterate and how to make things better. We basically were trying to get a ping pong ball through our hands as quickly as possible. I credit Eve McLean, who used to work at Waystar, for teaching me that one. So it's a lot of fun, and it's volunteers. So you can dedicate your time to teaching kids about IT or whatever area of the business that you're in. So here's a few things that I've had the privilege of doing at JA. Not saying I'm so special, any of you all could do these things, right? I've led resume workshops at several Louisville area high schools, both in Louisville and Indiana. I've given talks on career in IT and played those collaborative games I talked about earlier with the ping pong ball. One of my JA contacts was like, oh yeah, beer pong. I did not play beer pong with 3rd through 5th graders. So I've taught classes on coding in IT to elementary kids at JA's summer camp, and that was really fun. I actually went in and JA had a whole curriculum design for me, and I could actually teach these kids how to do things like if-then-else statements and things like that in a way that wasn't perhaps fun for me, but super boring for them. So it was a fun way for them to learn about this stuff. Along with several Waystar team members, we did JA in a day, which is basically where you take half your day and you teach a business and economics class to elementary school kids in a way that makes sense to them. They actually run a little business or talk about products they'd like to make. And I've participated in their JA Expo called JA Inspire, where kids come to learn about different careers available to them. So JA is really an amazing organization. And here's some photos from that. There I am teaching about, that's the coding class I did at their summer camp. There I am giving a resume workshop in the middle, mock interviews. There I am playing the not beer pong here. And there's our Waystar volunteers doing JA in a day. And they're my apprentices and some other folks from Waystar participating in the JA Inspire Career Expo. All right, call to action. JA Need is always looking for volunteers. If you want to impact kids and help them learn about IT or business or any area that you may work in, come grab a card, talk to me. I can get you hooked up with the right folks at JA, and we can make that work. So, to recap, here are the things I would love for you to consider having your organization get involved in. None of these cost any money, they just cost time. Become a BIP 502 employer sponsor. Get involved with Code Louisville or Code Kentucky as a mentor. Partner with the JCPS Academies of Louisville High School. Our goal is that every high school, every academy and every high school has at least 2 employer sponsors. With all the amazing businesses that we have here in our area, there's really no excuse for every high school not to just be overflowing with employer sponsors. And please consider volunteering with Junior Achievement. They are truly an amazing organization, and it's a great way to get kids younger than high school interested in our career, which I really do think is very impactful and great. So You can email me, mark.hamner@waystar.com, grab a card, come talk to me after, and I'll be happy to get you hooked up with the right people or tell you more about these opportunities. So, thank you for your time today. Come see me after, and that's it for me. Thank you all.
What a great way to lead, 2 ways, helping the young folks and reaching into the future to have influence on leadership. So we've got Eric Satterley. Thanks, Eric. Feel free to get started when you want.
Very careful with that when I want. So yeah, feel free if you need to go grab some refreshments or anything. That's going to be a tough act to follow for sure. It was very good, and I'm still trying to process so much of it, so I got to get my head on straight here. But yeah, so I appreciate the opportunity to be here. You know, and full disclosure, I'm filling in for Chris. So Doug contacted me yesterday and was like, "Hey, we may need a little bit of help," and I'm like, "Well, I actually was at a conference last week and gave this talk. I was like, I could kind of reprise that." And he said, "That sounds great." And he started giving me some, ground rules on this. I was like, "Well, hold on. It's going to have to not be too much modification." So you'll get a little bit of that. But this conference was in Louisville last week. It's a thing called Blue Notes. So this is a company called Explorance. They make survey software, evaluation software. And so they were in town and asked me to come and do this. This is like a kind of a higher ed data talk that I did. And so it was a really interesting conference. It was down at the Brown Hotel, and this is a picture, like the first night they made everybody go up on the rooftop and take this picture. And I started to meet a lot of these people at this conference, and they're all over the world. It was this very eclectic group. I mean, people from Australia, people from England, Canada, I think it was me from Louisville. So interesting mix, and one thing that an evaluation company is going to do really well at their conference is get feedback and surveys. So every one of these sessions, they're doing evaluations in real time, and they're giving speakers feedback, and then they said, they're going to give a prize out for the best speaker. And I'm thinking, oh, I got to get this, right? This would be awesome to do. And so I tell you this because I met this one lady from Australia who we had a really interesting conversation because she was nervous about giving her talk. And I said, well, you're going to be great because that accent. And then she was like, my accent? You've got the accent. And I'm like, no, you clearly. And I was like, when you're in Louisville, you've got the accent, right? So anyway, I went to her talk. And, she killed it because she talks about Peter Alexander and red-bellied black snakes. And I wasn't expecting this. Does anybody here know what Peter Alexander is? So apparently this is a guy in Australia, and he does nothing but make pajamas. So she weaved a story about an Australian pajama maker who has a lot of stores and red-bellied black snakes. And I was like, you know how you get that feeling that it's like, well, I'm not winning this now. There's no way, So at any rate, she did a really good job with these stories, and it was very interesting. So then I kind of had to think about maybe a new angle, and I thought, well, I'll make a lot of friends because all these people, they're staying at the Brown Hotel, right? And they're all in the Brown, and I've never really seen a conference that was at the Brown, and everybody's staying in there. And so I'm having a great time meeting all these people and telling them all the ghost stories in the Brown. I'm like, oh, this is super haunted, right? You're not staying on the 13th floor, are you? And some people are like, I am. I thought I heard somebody talking when I was in the shower in the next room, and I was like, oh, that's, that happens all the time here. It's, So just having a good time, having it up, and then I go give my talk, this talk that I did, and I'm not, so they took a picture, and I look at this picture later, and I kind of zoomed in, and I'm like, wait a second, that's peculiar, and you're probably like, well, that's just something on the camera or phone or whatever took it, but I'm like, I'm looking at that and trying to figure out, that's interesting, it's unique, but whatever, it's, kind of just let that go. And then they asked me to come and be on a panel, kind of on the main stage later, that was talking about the ethical use of student data, demographic data for assessment purposes. So I'm on this panel, and this is kind of the room we're in, and there I am sitting up there. And I look at this picture again and kind of zoom in on it, and these little things are there. And they're not on anybody else. you know, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, so this was in the other room. I come over here, like this is a different phone, different camera, whatever. Takes this picture, you know, and now I'm starting to think, I don't know, this is weird, this has got me going. So I start looking at some of these other pictures that I'm in, and I don't know if y'all can see it, but like, it's really faint, but I think there was something in there too. So I don't know, maybe there is something to the brown, like it's creepy, I don't know. But I tell you what really was scary was they made me be on this panel. They asked, and it sounded great, like, you know, 2 months before, you want to do this panel? I'm like, this sounds amazing. Well, this dude's from British Columbia, and he's like the provost of assessment for the University of British Columbia. And then Janine was from the University of Manchester, so from England, and they're both like the heads of these big academic departments at, you know, 50,000 student schools. And it's all about, you know, ethical use of data. And I'm like, this is going to be great. I'm behind these two heavyweights. I'm just going to coast. Like, I can get up there. I get the cred for being on this panel. And then they open it up to these questions from the audience. And everybody's like, with changing U.S. laws on, you know, use of data for admissions decisions. And they're both like, well, we'll yield to our U.S. colleague. And I'm like, seriously, like, I did not sign up for this. So I did a lot of tap dancing. It was pretty good. I don't even know what I said. I don't ever want to go back and hear it because I don't think it was very good. But just getting through that. So it really was spooky. Maybe those ghosts did come get me. I don't know. But so this is the talk I did there. Just a little bit of setup because I thought the stories were, you know, at least fun for me. This is more like just to kind of share a little bit of my higher ed cred for that community. But I'm the CIO at Bellarmine. Been there about 12 years and counting. I got to keep that up there. So I appreciate Mark saying about 25. I'm like past 30 doing this, and I feel it, you know. So this would be way more for that group because this was like an assessment community, and I'm kind of like the weird outsider in there, like the IT guy. You're definitely more my people. But I always do love anytime I can have a slide where I can bring Bruce Springsteen, baseball, and alcohol together and think about the glory days that we had. Because if you're in a university, it's an interesting setting, right? That, like the politics, you've got so many different centers of power, and so like leadership shifts happen all the time, and departments get reassigned in different areas, and so we're always in transition in some way, shape, or form. And so we had kind of this amazing period of time for about 3 years where IT and kind of the data reporting unit of the university were all combined in one group, and we did some really cool things, learned a lot of things, and that's a lot of what I'm going to talk about through this, or kind of some of those adventures. So this isn't going to be too long. I mean, it's like 76 slides, but we'll get through it pretty easily. But anyway, this is what we're talking about. Short history lesson, kind of sets the stage for this a little bit. I'm going to describe what I see as a problem, look at how we lost our way a little bit. I think that's by chasing shiny things. Tell you a true story of opportunity knocking, and then maybe a little bit of approach to how you find your way, and then wrap it up and, you know, grab whatever's left on the table and get out of here. So this is my history lesson. And I like this guy. I don't know if you've ever seen him. If you've seen me talk before, I've probably talked about him. But Gil Press, interesting guy. And he writes a lot of neat articles, but he's got this kind of theme on this short history of IT. And I like it. It sort of sets things different. You know, a lot of times when you think about like the history of technology, we're always talking about Moore's Law and transistor count and things. But he sort of sets up like these 3 fundamental developments that happened that put us on this road that we're on today. This idea of, you know, essentially the invention of computing and binary computing, not decimal, so the EDVAC and not the ENIAC. But, you know, really, if you think about it, we're going back like nearly 100 years into that space. And then in 1973, Ethernet out at Xerox PARC. Then in 1989, like HTTP, right? The internet protocol is invented. So like those 3 things stack. And the reason they're significant is it kind of takes the focus away from the idea of like this monolithic mainframe into more distributed computing, which really ushers in this new era of the generation of data, right? We've got these computers talking, we're sharing all of this data, and it kind of brings, like these successes bring these new ambitions. So we've got this, you know, all this data, and so, you know, new computing paradigms shift up, and we've got the cloud and all of the, you know, magic and wonderment that it brings, and we're building new things and creating new data, and it's just exploding, right? The amount of data that we create year over year is just, you know, asymptotic, this growth we're on, which is great. But it also produces these challenges. And this isn't something I created, this is Gartner, but I just think it's fantastic. And it helps illustrate what you feel in your bones as an IT professional is the problem, because historically, we think we're pretty good, right? If you're the business and you need technology, you gotta have an IT department. You probably gotta have a data center down there. And truth be told, maybe on the business side, you don't really like them, right? Because they're these people that maybe they're a little arrogant technically, and they're down there, they're in dark mode on their screens, right, in the basement, and you don't want to approach them, but you need them. And if they're doing good work, they've got capacity in these systems they've built, and they really do want the things being used. So historically, we're in this space where IT is delivering these services and these applications, and users aren't consuming them fully. And they're maybe pushing the users, hey, come on, use this, try this is a great service, try this feature, do this thing. And then we reach this point in time, and Gartner calls it when the consumerization of IT hits, and that's when all of our users are now exploding with technology at home. iPhone's amazing, you can do all these things. And they're coming back to work and they're like, look, I can do all this stuff on my iPhone and you're telling me I can't do this for whatever reason. And the users get very frustrated. They get frustrated with IT. They want to do all these things on their phone. IT is just in their way now, right? So we went from being this department that's producing and delivering, nobody's using our stuff, to now they've passed us. They're doing things we don't want them doing for whatever reason, and let's just call it maybe security, compliance, things like that. And over time, the users really, the business starts to pull, the demands grow and grow and grow, and IT's trying to provide a stable operating environment. And the bigger that gets, the bigger the crisis is, right? And so it's this quiet crisis that happens, and some of these things that happen in that crisis, we would call shadow IT. I mean, that can be great innovation. I'm not against that. I love innovative, cool things that are happening out in that space, but the IT department doesn't know about it. You've got shadow IT popping up everywhere. Users are doing things on their own. They're spinning up their own IT departments, right? The world gets so easy. They can go just swipe their credit card and get a CRM, and here's how I'm operating. And oh my gosh, right? So this is this crisis that just grows and grows and grows, and over time, the amazing technology the world gives us makes this crisis worse. So this is what it looks like in higher ed, and I know this is what it looks like in all of your old spaces too. But if we go back about a decade, there's a group, EAB, Educational Advisory Board, that kind of did this research. But we can look at 2010, we were very limited and centralized, right? This is much more the data center that's operating on-prem. We have a few huge applications that run our university, and so a student information system, pretty critical, our ERP, financials, HCM, and then a learning management tool. And maybe there's a varying degree of integration, institution to institution, that's in that stack, but that's about it. And then we go 10 years out, and we've got everything. I mean, we've got, if you're Alton Brown fans, we've got unitasking solutions for everything that you can imagine to happen on our campus. And I'm not talking about just Bellevue, I'm talking about every school. We need them all, right? Because, maybe that's going to make the difference, be the silver bullet, whatever it is. And so we're just sprouting up these applications everywhere. And maybe you've got good governance, and maybe you don't. And when I go back to leadership at universities change and organizational structures change frequently, new groups come in and it's they bring these technical tools that they used at another university. It's well, we've got to have these things. They don't think about the context that they're plugging them into, and so we just get this sprawl of applications. And so our world starts to look more like this, where we get into this situation of architecture by accident. We didn't strategically plan for all of these systems and this mess that we have of things, but we sure got them. And so you would call these things brittle integrations. Some of these file transfers that so-and-so did, and then they're gone, and that thing fell over, and nobody knows why I'm running this thing with 6-month-old data, and nothing's fresh, and we're all confused, and it's a huge mess. So we've got these problems. And then we still have all of these systems, and they're just pumping out more and more data too, right? So it's just further exacerbating the problems and these challenges. And so we have lots of data, and everybody thinks that's great, right? This is the new oil, of course, and so we've got data. And at your university, we've got data from our student information systems. We've got course evaluations. We've got, learning management system activity, how much time are students putting in these tools. We've got outcomes data, we've got engagement data with campus events. Are they using facilities, financial data? We got tons of this, but as it turns out, like we're really bad about dealing with it. And I saw this quote from a group, they're kind of a higher education consulting group, Tambellini. And this is good, and I feel this in my bones too, but we hear frustration all the time about incomplete and incoherent data from nearly every institution we talk to. Decisions about whether they can afford a program or whether to merge with another organization, urgent existential questions, and not having holistic quality data impedes the ability to make these decisions. And then put another way, this higher ed dive said 8 out of 10 leaders in higher ed say it would be very or extremely helpful to have a single source of unified data. But 2 in 10 feel like they have it. And that's it. Like it makes sense, but we got all this stuff and it's hard. Like how do you deal with it? How do you make it make sense? So, I would suggest that you've got to go from a model like this and whatever your constituents are in your different spaces and industries where you've got these pockets of data and maybe the data are coupled in varying ways to something that's a little more central, and understood and curated and normalized kind of down in your core, right? So thinking about this, like one of the quotes that I'm working to refine, like what is the best way of this, and I had Microsoft designers say, make it look elegant, and this is what I came up with. So I'm going with it. But, personally, I don't want these pockets of excellence. And every one of these vendors is going to tell you their solution is this, the most excellent solution to do a thing. But I've got these pockets of excellence everywhere that aren't helping me have an excellent organization, right? I want organizational excellence and not these little singular excellent episodes that occur. So how do you do it? I appreciate your story time. This is my story time. And so this is, it's like, so let's all sit down and talk about this. But this is Dr. Jay McGowan. So this was the president of Bellarmine. He's passed away. But when I got there, he was the president. So that's the man that hired me. And a story about him that was great was that he loved Christmas. And he didn't love Christmas. But he loved the ceremony of Christmas. And one thing he loved doing at Bellarmine was selecting the Christmas card and writing the message that was in it. Like that was huge, and he took so much pride and care about that. But early in my tenure there, we were having a conversation. He's like, Eric, I hate doing these Christmas cards because inevitably we will send out a bazillion Christmas cards, and they will come back to us, and it will be the wrong address, and people will be mad because they told us last year that they moved, or this person had passed away, and then we sent another card to them, and we didn't write that down, or whatever. And he's like, I don't understand how we can't send Christmas cards. Sounds silly, right? And I was like, I can exactly understand how we can't send Christmas cards, because if you've seen our data ecosystem, the problem is we don't know which system we're using to pull the Christmas cards. We're probably using the same spreadsheet we sent last year. People have called in to whatever department. They've said, change my address. We've changed it in one system but not another. These things just aren't all working together effectively. And it sounds silly, right? But something as simple as like Christmas cards was a way that we were able to like make that connection on what a problem was and begin to kind of build sort of a road forward for us. And so that's the embrace or replace. We had decided that a couple of our old core systems had just gone too far afield and were in disrepair, and we were either going to embrace them and fix them or replace them. And ultimately we decided to replace, and or it was embrace or replace back then and made it or replace. So kind of rallied around that, but the whole way we got there was through Christmas cards and frustration over how do we just manage simple things like address data for our community. So when you think about that, like how do you use these kind of markers, visualizations, ways to kind of engage people that may not need to go, he doesn't need to know how this system works, but conceptually it's a pretty big deal. And so this is one of the tools that I use at Bellarmine all the time. And this is my value framework for information technology, because you can look at this lens two ways, and I'm a huge fan of like these pyramids sort of showing the way that we derive value. Because at the end of the day, the top of the pyramid for us is experience. Every user on our campus, they don't care about any of this stuff. I mean, they hope it's working, we're doing it right, taking care of things, but at the end of the day, it's all about their experience. their experience with the system, the tool, whatever. And for us, on the IT side, as these practitioners, to deliver a great experience, we've got to be doing this stuff. So for me, it starts at the bottom and we build up. And our old president, Dr. McGowan, we used to look at this framework and he would debate with me like the order of these things. And this was the one we would always go round on. He's like, recoverability and security. Security should be first, recoverability second. And I'm like, they're all foundational. And I don't necessarily care about the order. But the point is, if you can get people so engaged that they want to debate with you, where you organize these things, that's really powerful. Right now, we can have the conversations that springboard into where we should align, like our budgetary assets, our personnel assets to take care of problems. But when I talk about this with our IT organization, I'm like, these things are really important, but we've really got to understand that at the end of the day, like that's the community sees that, they care about experience. So it's kind of like the iceberg. There's a lot of things going on under the water, but that's the thing that people are super interested in. And I show you this pyramid, our framework, because pyramids are, again, a powerful way to kind of explain some of these things. So I don't know if you've seen this before, but the DIKW pyramid. And so this is a really interesting one that helps people maybe understand data and what we need to do with that as we begin to build. So data can create information, can create knowledge that we can then create wisdom from, but they're all pretty significant and foundational. And so to make it make a little more sense, if you think about it like this, data, red, some coordinates, a version, right? And then what is that raw data? What's the meaning of that? Well, maybe the meaning of that is that data is describing something in a traffic pattern, right? So south-facing traffic light on the corner of two streets, and it's turned red. Great. So now we've created information. We've made meaning out of some of these raw facts that we have that are data. But now let's put that into some degree of context. Like, why does that meaning matter, right? Well, it matters because the traffic light I'm driving towards has just turned red. So now you've got some context, right? I've got a bunch of facts that are there about a traffic light. I know where that traffic light is. It's a little more context. It's a traffic light on a street. I'm driving my car towards that traffic light, and if I want to apply that, I better stop the car, right? So if I were to have something, say this self-driving car, like that applied wisdom out of those facts is pretty significant. And this pyramid kind of visually represents the way that you get there. So we spun this into kind of a pyramid to help tell that story a little bit for our school and things that are specific to us because it makes it stick. I did just add this layer of noise though, because I think that's useful too, because we see this a lot. But like, there's noise at this layer, and then we have data, information, knowledge, wisdom. So, I don't know if that's super readable, but the ovals, they represent things that are elements of data. And then the tools are the rectangles that are on here. So, if you think about things that you get that are noise kind of in our work, you get a lot of anecdotes. That's my favorite noise, and I hear this all the time. It's like, well, students want blah. Why do you know that? Well, they told me. They all told you they want this thing, right? Like, so, but that's all day, every day for me. It's just these anecdotes. But other things that are noise, shadow systems, isolated systems. Another great one is that, CSV that somebody exported a year ago and still use. And I'm like, that is so, but these anecdotes all kind of creep in and they can really mess you up, right? Some of this noise can take you off track. But then, we have data. And so if I can start to show our community, like, here are our facts. And here's how we assemble those, and here are the tools that we use to kind of drive us to ultimate wisdom, which for us, it's program evaluation. It's back to that slide several slides ago, like what things make sense for Bellarmine to continue doing? What things should we double down on and invest more in? And so how do we leverage the data, intelligence, and things that we have to get there? So this I find is a useful tool. I certainly encourage, like in every context, to kind of build things that are these general, kind of hallmarks that you can point to, but also make them specific to your organization. I think is really helpful in telling the story. And then this is just like taking that kind of to the next level when you think about the different journey that you can have with your data. If you think about it as simply something from, I'm going to have data that helps me report. It's valuable. It's very valuable, right? But is my data helping me innovate? And so, kind of moving from just descriptive, what happened, diagnostic, maybe why did that happen, predictive, what will happen, prescriptive, what's the best outcome that can happen. So, as you have a better practice, create more wisdom from this, that really increases the value. But I would submit that none of that matters that unless you have good curated core data kind of down at the core. But this can be, right, a very expensive endeavor as you embark on all that. So I think it's really important to kind of, have that in mind that there's a lot of investment that you can make, a lot of effort that goes into these things. And I'll share this cautionary tale. And I don't really know this guy, Mark Staus, but several people that I do know were liking this article that he shared on LinkedIn. So I went in and looked at this, and I thought this was really interesting and something that I also feel, because I think sometimes we get invested in these systems or programs, and you just, you've got your gut that this matters. And it's hard to get away from when you've made some of these investments. But this story, and I don't know the company, but I believe this could be true in a lot of situations today. But he was saying that this company at a mid-range CFO went through and he's like, look, I understand the need for data and all of this, but we have invested millions of dollars and we're not making better decisions from this. This hasn't really helped us. This hasn't moved the needle on the business. And so they just gutted that whole team and, chalked it up to wasting millions of dollars on that. So can go, we can go a lot of ways. It's one of those chasing the shiny things on this end too. So kind of bringing this together, I'll give you a couple takeaways that I would share, just thoughts. I think it's important if you're in data leadership, you want to use data and you want to lead with that in your organization, tell stories, because a lot of times maybe you're so in the weeds with that, but it's not resonating with people. You're going to throw things out. It's like, well, this, we need to have this in SQL or whatever, and you've lost them at that point. So it's got to be stories. It's got to be Christmas cards that make it real to people. I think consistent repetition of those themes is critical. If you just keep kind of changing your direction every week, then nobody's going to know where you're going. You're going to get lost. So simple slogans that you throw out, themes that you're going towards, that value framework. I've had that for 10 years that we throw up, and everybody gets it and knows it. So there are always things in there we can point to. We're able to direct where we put budget kind of in those categories, and that helps, and people get it. I would submit that a few systems with trusted data are way better than many systems with suspect data, regardless of the functionality, because you're going to hear it all the time that it's well, this system does blah, 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 but if it's got, crap data feeding it, who cares what the blah, blah, blah it is, Maybe it's actually giving you, its ultimate wisdom is, hey, guess what? Gun the car, right? The light's not red. Yeah, it's amazing that it can make that decision and it can drive the car, but if the data are wrong, that's terrible. And then it's also know your why. I think it's so critical. We talk about this at Bellarmine all the time. It's well, we're doing this thing. Well, why are we doing it? Before you embark on any of these initiatives or endeavors, I would suggest you define success. What's our goal as we set out to do this? Because if you don't do that, you're never going to know if you got there, right? And then you go into a project for a year, people will redefine the scope and the goal, and you'll just constantly be adrift chasing the thing. So I think it's really important to know your why, and helps you avoid the cautionary tale. So that's it. Landed the plane before 10 for you here, and appreciate your time. Thank you.
As IT leaders, we often stand in the breach. In Mark's case, we're really standing in the breach between the future of IT and what we can do for our clients and what the students need and what our business needs. With Eric, we're trying to lead the organization into using data appropriately and not getting distracted by those shiny objects. Think about your career and how you can stand in the breach and be that perfect connector between the business and the technology associated with that. link up with me on LinkedIn if you're not already linked in. If I reach out to you to have a chat, please give me a few minutes to talk about what the meeting was like and what you'd like to see. I'm very thankful for all of you being here, and I hope you have a great week. Thank you.